Hello, and welcome to Dig This, a podcast by The Quarry. Today we're going to be talking about the Guernsey Cheshire Home and future plans. With me in the studio is Rob Shepherd. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Cheshire Home, it's probably very well known to some people, but not so well known to everyone. So just give us a little bit of background to how it came about.
It's a real conundrum, this being well known, because yes, we are quite well known, but there are so many people that I meet that think it's an old people's home, which it's not. It's a home for forces vets, which it's not. And many people don't know where it is, which is very frustrating. We've been around nearly 40 years. It was founded by a group of volunteers, probably over 40 years ago is when they started work on it. It tries to embody the principles of Leonard Cheshire, who was indeed a war hero from the Second World War, and that's possibly why people think it's a vet's home. And he was, quite famously, he was disabled. He lost a leg in the war. And after the war, he set up a whole series of factories and other homes and institutions across the UK, where the principle was, I'm less concerned with the fact that you've lost your left leg. I'm more concerned with what you can now do. You've got your right leg. What can we do with what you have? And that principle really embodies what the Cheshire Home in Guernsey is all about, is we're much more interested in facilitating life for those residents that live with us. And they've all got physical disabilities of one sort or another. Happily, we're not immediately in a period after the war, I don't think. So our physical disabilities amongst our residents are generally around MS, MND, stroke, car accidents. So there's a variety of physical disabilities, but we're concentrating on physical disability, but we're really concentrated on physical ability. What is it that our residents want to do to make their life as fulfilling as possible, even though they've got this disability?
If we look at the life of the home and what's going on inside the home, could you just give us a bit of an insight into that?
Well, yes, I always say to anyone I see, please come down. The most active time is probably between sort of 9:30 and 1 o'clock in the home, because people generally, it takes time to get everyone up. Obviously, we don't get everyone up at the same time. And then people have their breakfast at different times, and there's activities in the morning. And you go in. I went in last week, and 3 of the residents were obsessed with watching the curling quarterfinal, or the last game of the group stage, I think it was. A couple of others were playing Uno. There's 2 particular residents who are incredibly creative, who do this. One makes beautiful jewellery, which she sells at various stalls. Another woman does these sort of bead painting. And every time I go in, no matter what time of day, they are working on those, because that's what really interests them. And then there'll be people who are about to go out, perhaps to the gym, or to see a relative, to go out for lunch, to go to the shops, to go for coffee. We're interested in what they want to do with their lives. And that's why we need carers. I mean, 90% of our costs is on salary for care staff, because that's what we do.
You mentioned the cost. So how much is it costing to run the home?
It costs about 1.6 million each year to run the home. As I say, 90% of that is salary on carers. You want to ask me the funding model. I mean, broadly what happens is that the residents would each receive a long-term care allowance. That's where they would have that in any event. They assign that over to us. And then we have to fundraise the other sort of 600,000 each year. We are a home where there are other people in the island who have MS and who have similar challenges as our residents. But it's fair to say that there are a number of people in the island who have MS who have the money and resources to be cared for at home. So those are the people that don't come across our door. So those who do come across our door are generally not as wealthy. And although other care homes might make, we have discussions about what top-ups people could make, we're not a care home in the sense it's granny coming in, therefore you can sell granny's home, or you've got other access to resources. These are people whose families are still living in their homes. So whilst we have discussions with our residents about what other additional contributions they could make, in the vast majority of cases, they're not able to make additional contributions. So that's why, as a charity, we have to fundraise to make the sums work. And we have good years and we have bad years. Last year was a not bad year, actually. 2 years before that were pretty grim.
And how does the fundraising go about? So I know you've got like some headline events. Boxing Day Swim is one of them.
Boxing Day Dip's great. I mean, that's great fun as well as a good fundraiser. Every fundraising event has two aspects, really. There's the raise money bit and there's the raise profile bit. And running stories in the press is not really a fundraising. Doing an interview like this is not fundraising, but it does raise profile. And it's really heartening, the reaction I get from people after doing a podcast or after doing an interview. People do call up and say, actually, I've been thinking about this, how I might be able to help you in this way. But yeah, you're right. So fundraising, there's one anchor event, which is the Dream Holiday Draw, which I say to your listeners, it's not sold out yet. There's still more tickets available. And that's for £10 each month, you get entered in a draw for a £6,000 Dream Holiday Draw every month. So for £10 a month investment and helping us, you get the chance to get a £6,000 holiday draw. And that's been very successful. That raises a six-figure sum for us at the moment, but it could raise more than that if it were completely sold out. So that's a big thing. But on top of that, yes, we have legacies, which are very difficult to predict. We have the Boxing Day Dip. We have the Havelet Regatta, which is coming up soon. But there are other events to go. There's a quiz recently which raised, I think, £3,500 on a night, which is fantastic. But it's a long, hard slog. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's a real long, hard slog because, as we say, we don't get any direct funding from the states. We are required to get on with it ourselves.
Will that model ever change, do you think?
It's a really good question. On the 1st of January each year, I wake up thinking, right, here we go again, another 600,000. I would like not to have to raise that 600,000. I fully accept that we should be raising some, but that is an awful lot of money. And one of the problems, which we'll come on to, one of the challenges we have about a new facility is that we'd like to build a new facility, not just because our present facility is rather tired, but because actually we know there's a pipeline of potential residents over the next 20 to 30 years, where we know we can do more for more people. But let's, just for the ease of sums, we've 11 residents now. If we get 22, I don't want to have to be raising 1.2 million in a 22-bed facility. Now, clearly it wouldn't double up because there would be economies of scale and there would be savings elsewhere. But I need to work out, once we've got the facility there, we need to work out additional sources of revenue that will enable us to close that funding gap, such that our fundraising requirement becomes at least stabilised around a number that we think we can reasonably achieve each year. And so those other sources of revenue might well be physiotherapy for obviously non-residents as well as residents. We have a day centre as it is at the moment. One other line of discussion, because we've been talking to HSC, it's no secret, for about 7 or 8 years about the potential facility, and they, whenever I say that we're in trouble, they get very scared because they know that but for us, these 11 highly needy, complex needs of our residents would fall upon the government's, not hands, but beds. And that's not a scenario they want to come about. So they need us, but on the other hand, we're quite proud of our independence. So there are other things. So the other thing which we've talked about with them is what's called step up and step down care. So someone who perhaps goes into hospital for a knee replacement, and after so many days, 2 or 3 days, they're well enough to leave hospital and frankly liberate that bed for someone else to go into hospital. A hospital bed is very expensive, but they're not quite well enough to go home yet. They need that additional care. Well, a knee is a piece of cake for our carers compared to sort of complex MS or other needs. So that step down care is something we think we could do, and that might be quite a good source of revenue for us. But, you asked me, will that model ever change? It's got to be on the table as to how that model changes. It's something we've got to talk about with HSC. But I'll be frank, there are 2 issues with that. One is HSC's got no money. The States is not replete with money at the moment. But the other is, and this is more subtle, is that part of our appeal to the Guernsey public is we get no direct funding from the States of Guernsey. We belong to you. Please help us support the home. as soon as we say, we get a little bit of funding, it kind of undermines that message. So we've got to be careful how we play this. The Guernsey Cheshire Home is a model of slightly different funding arrangements. There, the States of Jersey funds the core costs for the home, and fundraising takes place for additional activities such as holidays for the residents and those sort of things. So that's a model we could look at, but of course you're still dependent on someone writing you a cheque to fund that model. The Guernsey Cheshire Home is bigger, of course it is, and it's more modern. It was built about 20 years ago, I think. But the key thing in both facilities is the word home. And there's something about our facility, and I've mentioned this before, and in the discussions with residents around the whole possible move, we've all lived in houses that that have not necessarily been in Rolls-Royce condition, but they're our home. It's an emotional attachment to a building. I'm used to seeing that crack on the wall because it's my crack on my bedroom in my home. So we don't want it to be some sort of sterile facility. It's got to be a home where residents feel comfortable, where they put. Gavin, one of our former residents, who died a few years ago, who was a massive Liverpool fan. So his rooms were festooned with Liverpool posters. That's really important that we have the touches that make it home for each of those residents.
So you're talking about the new facility. Like, how is planning towards that going, and what's the vision?
We're at an early stage, I think it's fair to say. Well, yes and no, we're at an early stage. We've been talking, as I say, to the government about this for some time. And actually, I have no criticism of the officers and the deputies at HSC or indeed ESS. They would all like to make this happen. And what we were fairly well advanced on, there was a little plot at the Fontaine Vinery development, which had our name on it. But of course, that's hit the buffers somewhat. So the reason why we've gone public with this sort of, are there any private pieces of land elsewhere, is that something happened before Christmas where we were approached about a piece of land, or a property, in fact. And in the end, nothing came of it. The seller was prepared to discount the price, but on balance, we felt it was just a bit too much for us because it would have to be built again, rebuilt, remodeled. And once you add all the other costs, you think, oh. And we've also looked at remodelling our existing site. Andrew Dyke, who's been very supportive of the home, well-known local architect, has done some plans, both on that property we looked at before Christmas, but also our existing site. And what's clear is that actually the costs of remodelling our existing site are not much different to building or rebuilding another site. And you have the added issues of, well, what do we do with our residents when we're rebuilding their home? So, but what I think what came out of the process from seeing this place before Christmas was, well, there might be someone else out there. And part of our ethos is we stand on our own 2 feet. We try to stand on our own 2 feet. So let's see what's out there. And that's why we come to it in relatively unformed requests, because we're saying to people, well, you might have a piece of land. And I'm happy to say, as a consequence of the publicity in recent days, I'm actually seeing a plot tomorrow. I've had 4 or 5 people come to me. Some of them will not be suitable. But I'm really, again, as I always am, whenever we run a story, either in, on the web or on the press, on the radio, the Guernsey public responds amazingly. There was this amazing, two winters ago, I think, we had our roof blow off. And front page of the press, and we had the money times 3 within about 5 days. And it was just £10,000, so it wasn't a massive. And then Sadia Roofing came along and offered to do it for us anyway. So it was just amazing generosity, amazing response from the public when they're asked. Which comes back to your first question, is that many of those people might say, yes, I'd love to help you, but I've no idea where to drop the cheque off because I don't know where you are and I don't know what you do. So we do have always this challenge about identifying clearly what we do.
Where do people drop the cheque off?
On the Rohais, at the Shorncliffe on the Rohais, just opposite the ambulance station. and we can make one of those big cheques. We can make we can put it through the window. It doesn't have to come through the letterbox.
When we looking at the future and the changing demographics and changing needs, are you seeing any trends that you're going to need to cater for in a new facility?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a number of things in that. We look after our residents really well. We have one resident who suffers from a particular condition who we were told when he moved in that he probably wouldn't live beyond 40. He's now in his late 50s. And actually, I don't think anyone else in the world has lived that long with this particular condition. So when we have residents, they might join us young, but they end up leaving old. So over the years, we've had sort of flows of age of demographic. We're probably we edged up to a relatively old group about 7 or 8 years ago, and then it came down, a younger one. It's edging up again now. So we are seeing people living longer with disability, frankly, because they're very well cared for. The other thing we see is that whereas in the old days, and my days are older than your days, you just had a simple wheelchair. Now the wheelchairs are very sophisticated. They're electric. They can be operated on a like a little ping pong ball on a stick, but they're big and chunky. So there are design issues around building a home where each of the doors have to be 1 metre wide. The corridors have to be a certain width. Obviously the showers have to have, or the baths have to have hoists purpose built. And actually that was the facility we saw before Christmas. One of the significant costs that we'd have had to embrace would have been effectively knocking down a whole bunch of partition walls and doorways to make them big enough. So that's one thing we see. MS is a growing disease statistically in society. So that is something which we will always have a number of people seeking assistance with MS. The HSE, I talked about a pipeline. HSE prepared for us a spreadsheet for themselves and shared with us a spreadsheet of potential future residents or future people needing our need about 3 years ago, and there were 60 names on that list. Now, of course, not everyone will necessarily need our help. They could, as I said earlier, care for themselves at home. Sadly, some of them might not survive until they get to needing our help. But that's a good flow of people who are all Guernsey residents. And I remember very much being in one of the states meetings in the last term, one of the committee meetings in the last term, and Peter Rohais was there. And when we were talking about the building that we quite like, he suddenly clicked. He said, well, actually, this is about housing, isn't it, for local people? Yeah. And I think that's something that can be lost a bit, and something I don't want HSC and ESS and the states generally to lose sight of. These are local people who need housing. And one of the things we talked about on this other development that might have been at the Fontaine Vinery was, well, we'll have the ground floor, but the next 2 floors or 3 floors could be key worker, could be other housing for local people. It doesn't have to be just the Cheshire Home here. Indeed, there's lots of research around the way in which the care or the morale within care homes, and not just physically disabled like us, but older care homes, if they're within a community setting where there are families and young people moving in and out, that's fantastic for those community settings, on both sides. So the idea that's very attractive to us of being down at the Fontaine Vinery. But we can't wait. We thought we should see what's out there, because it may be we have to go on our own.
And do you think this will be a bigger facility, take more people?
I think it has to be, because that pipeline that I've referred to, and because we know that there's a greater need and we can do more. But it is one of those things that, as I said earlier, we have to work out, well, if it's bigger, then it's got bigger cost. How do we meet the revenue? Where do we get the revenue? But on the other hand, if it is a bit bigger, then that gives us possible other sources of revenue, the step-down care that I referred to. So, and respite is the other thing which I missed out earlier, is that we have, every time we see HSCs, we could fill your respite bed 3 or 4 times over. Because there is a system where people who are caring for family members, the states will pay for 4 weeks respite care for that family every year. So that's a source of income for us if we are having these people in. And also, and it's been the pattern, certainly within the Cheshire Home, that is where our future residents come from. Because they come in, they feel at home. Our existing residents get to sort of know them a bit. And then when it comes to that moment when we've got a spare bed, we can say to the residents, well, Charlie, whoever, who comes in for respite, they would quite like a permanent bed. What do you think? And then the other residents can say, yeah, that's right. Because I go back to this point, it's like someone's home. It's a family. It's really important that these people get on. or at least like families, don't hate each other too much.
Yeah, it's an interesting look. How have the residents responded to the news that this development may happen?
Well, it's not entirely new to them. I mean, they know that they only have to look around the facility to know it's tired. But they, a bit like I described earlier, we've all lived in our home that's not Rolls Royce, but it's our home. And I think they also take the view, well, they understand that at some point, it's got to happen, but it ain't going to be today or tomorrow. So I think it's the human reaction, isn't it? Yeah, I know that's a good idea, but I don't have to deal with it today, so I won't. I mean, I think it would be wrong to say they're all sort of punching the air. No one would like that. I talk about my own experience as a very grumpy 15-year-old, 16-year-old, when my mum and dad wanted to move. My brother and sister had both left home. It was just me. I liked where we lived. That's my pals were. I could cycle everywhere, and they wanted to move. Oh, terribly long distance outside. I was born in Portsmouth, outside of Portsmouth. A couple of miles on the bike. But I was a grumpy teenager for a good 3 or 4 months. And then I got bored of being grumpy because actually it was quite nice.
And I guess for the staff as well, this could be a bit of a game changer as well.
Yeah, and one of the things which we're very, which I've identified to people I've talked to about plots is public transport links. Not all of our staff drive, and that's really important for staff and families, because not all our families drive. So being able to get to the home relatively easily on public transport is very important. And for all the staff, wherever we end up, for some it will be easier and for some it will be more difficult. And some, sadly, might decide, actually that's just a bit too difficult for me when I could go somewhere else. But again, we're not there yet. We're not talking days, months or weeks. This is a year's project at least.
And just wrapping up a little bit here, like if somebody's got a plot of land, if someone's got a building, if someone wants to make a donation, how do they go about that?
They can telephone the home, which is in the book, or they can email me, rob.shepherd@cheshirehome.gg.
It's fantastic.
Shepherd spelled as in the Good Shepherd, or Shepherd's Bush.
Rob, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that.
Bye. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you've got all this way, I'm really hoping that you've enjoyed our work. There's a few things you can do to support us. Follow, like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help spread the word of the Quarry. The other thing you can do is head on over to our website, where you can become a member and really support independent local news.